done calling it now.
Now?
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to make it on like recording.
Yeah, it's
Alright.
all.
Hi.
That was really dumb. Okay. Now get out. Okay, shh, he got it out of his system. In terms of where we're at, I talked a lot about tragedy and what makes it a tragedy. That's all going to be relevant there. Actually, one of the keys is going to be found here. But there are a lot of things that are going on, and that's only one theme. This is the second one that I haven't touched on too much yet. Macbeth's imagination is key to this play. His imagination. Macbeth has one of the most powerful imaginations that I have ever seen. Okay? And in this passage, more so than maybe any other that I've seen in this play or in any one of Shakespeare's plays, including Hamlet, you get into the mind of a man more than you've ever gotten into the mind of a man. And you actually know more, or my goal in this particular, these next coming lessons, are to have you know more about Macbeth than Macbeth knows about himself. So Macbeth is going to be doing a lot of things here, and he may not be conscious of all of them. So he will say things, but he will not know the full intent of what it is that he's saying. He doesn't know the full weight of what he's saying. He will make references, will catch them, he doesn't. Okay? Which is just cool. So you're getting into the mind of a murderer. You're getting into the core of another important word, Macbeth's conscience. It's acting upon him here, and his imagination is bringing it out into full force. You will now also know why he is, I give you the word rat. You'll find out why he was quiet for like 100 lines when the witches were speaking. Like you'll find out why. Okay? He's been wrapped so much with certain things that are going on in his head. It's more internal than it's external. So to give you an example of things, if you guys have only read a little bit of Shakespeare, in my reading of Shakespeare, I'll just draw from 3 plays. I can't remember if I mentioned this before. Okay, but if you read different plays, you'll see Shakespeare in his own writing style, it kind of changes. It becomes more sophisticated as he goes on. And some plays will be more complicated than others. So if I look at a play called Richard III. Richard III, Shakespeare makes very, very clear, because there's mystery in this play. Shakespeare makes very, very clear in Richard III who the villain is. And the villain is, in that play, Richard III. Okay. So Richard III comes out, and like his first lines, he basically says, "Hey, I'd like to introduce you to myself. I'm Richard III. I'm the bad guy." And he makes it very clear and it's very obvious, and it's not as much of an internal play as this one is. So he tells you, I mean, Richard III lays it all out for you. He knows exactly what he's going to do, when he's going to do it, and he lists it out. Then I look at a play like Hamlet, and Hamlet's a much more complicated play than Richard III, much more sophisticated, and it's one of his big 3. And Hamlet becomes an interesting play because Hamlet, it's kind of similar to Macbeth, you get into the mind of the man, he reveals his thoughts to you. Yesterday I even used as an example where last year the grade 12 classes went to go and see a performance of Hamlet, and while it was a bad performance of Hamlet, in that play what they tried to do is they tried to make the stage reflect Hamlet's mind. It's supposed to be his mind and then he reveals his thoughts. But in Hamlet, you have a particular character who is revealing his thoughts to you, but through the whole process of him revealing his thoughts and him thinking things through what his actions are going to be, it's entirely logical. Like he's reasoning things out. Okay, if I do this, it'll lead to this. If I do this, it'll lead to this. So it's very logical in his thoughts. You see where he's going. With Macbeth in this passage, he's revealing his thoughts, but his thoughts are always one step ahead. So his thoughts are always getting away from him. So he's expressing himself. He sort of lays out a thought, and then he sees where that thought's going to go, and it goes in a completely unexpected place. So it's almost like he's being led along, unlike a Hamlet who's aware. He's in control of his particular thoughts. So that's what's going to be interesting. And the places that it leads Macbeth are going to be like, holy shit. And good Lord, I'm getting this recorded in information. Also, too, can we move that up closer? Just in case they can't hear me and they hear this person in the hallway and stuff.
You should have worn a shirt with a chest pocket.
What is a chest pocket?
And you put the phone in the pocket,
breast
pocket.
Yeah, I don't fall
and
on
then you just hear it. If you had one.
If I have one. Well, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, you should.
I didn't think. Okay, so that's the premise. Okay? Watch how his imagination runs wild. Watch how his thoughts run wild. Okay? Everything's important. This is supposed to be watched, observed. You're in a theater, so you're supposed to observe these things. It's not really meant to be read. Okay? So you have to put yourself in that theater space. And you have to see what Macbeth is seeing. So it gives us the scene directions, stage directions there, and it says, inside Macbeth's castle. Hot boys, torches, enter a sewer and divers. These are just servants. And what they're doing is they're getting ready. And do you guys know what they're getting ready for?
Dinner.
Ooh, huh?
Dinner.
They're getting ready for dinner. Whose dinner is it?
Celebration dinner.
It's a celebration for Duncan. Okay, having a banquet. Okay, what has happened is Lady Macbeth's read the letter. They're devising plans, and they're saying, "Here's what we're going to do." Yeah, Kieran's just recognized it's going to be a big passage. So, literally, what's going on is they are having a banquet in honor of King Duncan. And it's happening at Macbeth's house. He's saying, hey, we're going to honor you. So what's happening is, this is where the plot's being devised. This is where Lady Macbeth is saying, we're going to kill him. So this is before King Duncan is actually on his way. Maybe he's already come. King Duncan, I might have actually already arrived. I can't remember. Macbeth, yes. King Duncan has already come. He's been greeted by Lady Macbeth. And Macbeth has now just arrived. And what he's doing is, there's things that are going on in front of him. And what he sees servants, and they have like plates and getting ready for dinner, and they have cups and chalices and things like that. So always keep that in your mind, that that's what he literally sees walking by. Because he's kind of in between. Like he sees like the kitchen, the dining table. He sees the dining table and he sees the kitchen. He's kind of in between, and he just sees these servants rushing by. So he sees cups and chalices, all this sort of stuff. And they're getting ready. Okay. He right now is making a very important decision. He's weighing things out. Do you know what he's weighing out? He's got to make a decision. He's deciding, do I murder or do I not? Do I kill Duncan or do I not kill him? Now you guys have read it. Don't worry if you get it wrong. I'll still believe that you read it. Do you know what he decides in this passage what to do? How many people think he decides to kill him? Decides not to kill him in this passage. Yeah. So he's actually going to make the decision here. Says, I can't go ahead with him. But we have to see how he comes to that. So this passage is going to have like a slow build-up. And it's going to lead to him making the decision not to kill Duncan, because that's not where he starts off in the passage. And also look, it won't make sense to you now, but as I explain it will. Watch the progression. He's going to start with weighing it out. Do I do it? What are the consequences? What are the benefits? So he'll do a little pro and con business. But watch, he tries to stick towards the first half of the passage. He tries to stick to practical, earthly concerns. Then as he goes beyond into the latter half of the passage, divine concerns start coming in. Godly concerns, right, will start coming in. So watch for that build as well. Okay? But I may as well get started with this bloody thing. Just know what's going on in terms of the actual scene. Okay? So, enter Macbeth. He's speaking by himself. Nobody else hears him except for us. So we are privy to what his thoughts are as he reveals them. And right off at the start, there's a reference. If it were done, when 'tis done, then 'twere well, it were done quickly. First off, literally, what is he saying? Yes. If I'm going to do this, I'd hope that it get done quickly, right? So if I got to murder this guy, I got to do this deed, he doesn't want to do it. If I got to do it, let's hope that it gets done very, very quickly. Okay? Literally, that's what's being said. There's a few more other things, but that's good for our purposes. Behind those lines, that's what he thinks he's saying. Behind those lines, there's more meaning. Have you heard something similar before in that phrase? That phrase should ring a bell to you. May not, but maybe you do. Maybe you know it.
Bible reference.
Oh, because you're looking at the notes that somebody gave you.
Nobody wrote anything in this book.
She's always a cheater, but she'd be right.
Sophia's book, it's a Bible.
Yeah. It is a Bible reference. It's a very important Bible reference. Okay? And this will make sense to you. This is not going to be challenging for you. But he's making an allusion here. And it is definitely a biblical reference. So if it were done, when 'tis done, then 'twere well it were done quickly. Well, I'll read you John 13:27. When Jesus had thus said, he was troubled in spirit and testified and said, Verily, verily, I say unto you that one of you shall betray me. Do you guys know the scene?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we have, he's saying one of you guys is going to betray me. Who betrayed him? Judas. Okay. Then the disciples looked on one another, doubting of whom he spake. Now there was leaning on Jesus' bosom one of his disciples, whom Jesus loved. Simon Peter therefore beckoned to him, that he should ask who it should be of whom he spake. He then, lying on Jesus' breast, saith unto him, Lord, who is it? Jesus answered, He it is, to whom I shall give a sop when I have dipped it. And when he had dipped the sop, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. So he gives him the dip. After the sop, Satan entered into him. Then Jesus said unto him, That thou doest, do quickly. Okay? So he's making that direct reference, okay, to the Judas scene, the betrayal. Does that make sense to you in this story? How so, Kieran?
Well, because Judas is betraying his leader, and then Macbeth is assassinating his
Exactly.
king.
Macbeth is playing the role of Judas. Okay? Macbeth has just revealed himself, not knowing that he has, he's revealed himself as a Judas. He recognizes this subconsciously but not consciously. He just thinks he said, I hope that I get this done quickly. If I'm going to do it, let's get it over with. He thinks he said that, but he's always saying more than what's on the surface. He's now just linked himself, and he recognizes the nature or the deed. He links himself, and he becomes a Judas figure. Okay? And that's true, because what's happening? Judas kills a king in Christ, his king. Here we have Macbeth killing a king, his king, King Duncan, who is a representative of Christ, right? Of Jesus. So here we have already that one link, okay? That's the easy part. That's the easy part. Your notes actually should have told you that. I can't believe that it doesn't. Okay, so he says that if it were done, when 'tis done, then 'twere well it were done quickly. Another thing to note there. He keeps saying it. What's the it? Murder. Note that he's a little bit scared of what it is that he has to do. The brave Macbeth doesn't want to say what it is that he's doing. Why? Clearly the guilt and things like that. He wants to stay away from it. He doesn't like that word right now. So he doesn't want to state what it is that he's doing. And then you might say, well, no, he does mention it because on the next lines, he's not scared of anything. He mentions it. He says, if the assassination could trammel up the consequence and catch with surcease success that, but this blow might be the be-all and the end-all here. Does he mention what it is he's going to do? What word does he use? Assassination. So he says, I'm going to assassinate him. So you're saying, well, no, he has mentioned, he's not scared of what it is going to do. He mentions it. It's interesting to note, okay? This isn't my interpretation, by the way, because I couldn't have figured this out. It's interesting to note that the word that he uses, the word assassination, this is a did you know, the word assassination is the first time it comes up in the written language. So it's the first time that we see that it's actually been used and written down. Okay? So it would not have been, even at that particular time, it would not have been a very well-known word. So what he's doing there is, what the argument is that here we have Macbeth, and he wants to stay away from what it is that he's doing. So what does he give us here? He gives us kind of like a euphemism. He gives us that idea of, I'm staying a little bit away from it. I almost want to touch this subject of murder and betrayal with gloves. Okay? So that's kind of what he's doing. He doesn't come out directly and say it. He's kind of vague. He's ambiguous by using a word that's kind of exotic. So if the assassination could trammel up the consequence and catch with his surcease success, that but this blow might be the be-all and end-all here but here. So we go on further. He's again speaking, importantly, to earthly concerns. He's thinking about the practicalities of this situation. I'm hoping that I can get away with it here on earth. So he's looking and saying consequences. What types of consequences could you have for murder? There's two types. Alyssa, why might you not want to commit murder? As much as you hate me, why may you not want to commit murder?
So I would go to jail or like be sentenced.
Okay.
Or like, isn't it like in that time to make it.
Okay.
Put it way on your mind.
Earthly concern. I will get caught, right? By the authorities, by the king's people, and so on and so forth. That's an earthly concern. What's going to happen to me in this life? But you might also be concerned about what's going to happen to me in the next life. Macbeth, as we start off, is trying. He won't be successful, but he's trying and saying, let me just figure out about what's going to happen to me here and now. Not later. Let me figure out what's going to happen here and now. That I can handle. That I can deal with. Okay? I might be able to deal with the earthly consequences. Hell, I might even be able to get away from them altogether. What he really doesn't want to deal with is what's going to happen to him afterwards. So he tries to ignore it. He tries to bury it away. He tries to pretend that it's not there. And that's why there's the stress in the words here. He says it twice. Okay? So he's hoping that just with this blow, the strike, the blow that I give Duncan, the killing blow, it will be the be-all and the end-all. All will be finished and done, and then I'll deal with any of the earthly consequences that come after. So here, I'll deal with the here and now. Okay, and he stresses it. Okay? And now we get very complicated.
The river image.
Shut up with your stupid notes, man. I'm giving you a blank copy next time. Yeah, but the notes aren't going to help you in terms of this.
I don't even understand how.
Yeah, and you may not even after I explain it. Okay. So you see their earthly concerns. Okay, that's what he's thinking about here. But here, upon this bank and shoal of time, we jump the life to come. Okay. So you guys actually have a note there. Does it tell you anything about that passage? It says there, line 7, weed, and then it ... come.
I would risk
You
the
jump
chance
the life
of
to
any
come.
life
Oh.
after that.
Oh, maybe it doesn't have.
Oh, risk
Mine-
consequences we might have to
Where
face
it
in an
says I
afterlife.
would risk the chance of any life after death. Macbeth uses the royal plural when speaking in song.
Oh,
So
yeah,
voice
I
out loud.
don't agree with that, no. Here's what he's doing. Saying, I'm going to give you a metaphor. Okay, so he's saying that there's two words there, and you might underline them. Star them, I'm going to use them quite frequently. It says there's a bank and a shoal. And he says there's this bank and shoal of time. What he means by that is there's this idea that what's a shoal? Well, if you go back and you study what that word is, one meaning that comes up is think of a shoal like a body of water. Okay? So a shoal is a body of water. Okay. Now what's a bank? Think of a river bank. Okay. So he's on the bank. Okay. So we have him. He's on the riverbank, and what he wants to do is he's hoping that he can jump the life to come. So, here upon this bank and shoal of time. He's on the bank of time. What's the opposite of time? He's on the bank of time. What's the opposite of time? You guys want?
Nothing.
It's impossible for
Isn't it like forever?
Yes, which we could call, it starts with an E.
Eternity.
Eternity. So he says, here on this bank and shoal of time. Right now he's basically saying,
He wants to jump eternity.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
he's in the world of time. That's the life that he's living right now. Okay? We are guided by time, we are, all that sort of stuff. So he's right now living in the life of time, the earthly life. He's on that bank, and what he's hoping to do is, he's hoping that he could jump eternity. He could jump, if I were to rephrase it, the afterlife. He states his intention. He knows. He knows that that what he's doing is wrong. That's different from Oedipus. Oedipus did not know. He didn't know what it was that he was doing. Macbeth is fully aware before he commits the act that it's wrong. And now what he's hoping to do is he says, I'll deal with the earthly consequences. I'll figure that stuff out. I'm just hoping that I can skip the consequences of the afterlife. I'm skipping the idea of having a damned soul and going down straight to hell where God is going to punish me. That's what he's worried about. He's hoping to skip it. He's hoping to make a jump. Okay? Do you think he can make that jump?
No.
So what you're finding out is that he's trying to make a jump that he cannot possibly complete. Note that for later. He's trying to make a jump that he can't possibly complete. Emily.
So does this relate back to the chart?
Yes. Goes back to the chart. It goes back to the idea you will see in these lines. He will speak of a word called ambition that I brought up to you. Ambition is him wanting to make a leap, to make a jump. It's a jump he can't make.
So he's gonna fall eternally?
Precisely. Okay? What's going to happen when you jump and you miss? You fall. And here we have the tragedy of Macbeth. He falls for it. As far as he wants to jump is as far as he'll fall. Okay? And that will be his tragedy there. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Because this image is going to get really white, messed up. Okay? So, wants to avoid it. That's image number one. Shakespeare's one hell of a complicated guy. And he's really good. I don't know that I agree with this interpretation myself. But I'll throw it out to you. Okay? You can take what you like from it. Some people have looked and they've studied Shakespeare. And you guys aren't getting the original version. So the original one that he wrote. You probably heard like First Folio and all of this sort of business, the stuff that he writes. So when they look and they say there's the more ancient text, right? If you go to like a museum and you see like, you know, Shakespeare's first Macbeth, you know, the handwritten one, it's going to look different than this, right? There's going to be people who are making multiple copies, right? But they have something called the printing press and they make a lot of mistakes. So sometimes an A would really be an O and all of this sort of stuff. So you can get different versions of Macbeth that will not look exactly like this in terms of the word, the spellings and stuff like that. Well, some scholars have noticed that there's a little bit of an issue with that word shoal. Okay? I believe it's spelled like this in your text.
Maybe school.
Yeah.
Okay. When you go back to Shakespeare's time, and actually in his first copy of Macbeth, called the First Folio, or one of his first copies of Macbeth, it would have been spelled differently. Okay? It would have been spelled, I believe, like this. So shoal would have been spelled shul or shoal. Looking similar to what word that you know? School. Okay. Apparently at this time, the word shoal and the word school were spelt the same way, but pronounced differently. So I'll say that again because this is going to be a messed up image. At that time, the word shoal, which meant body of water or river, and the word school, our school, were spelled the same way, but pronounced differently. That presents to us a problem, because when we read the text, we don't know which one he means. When I read the text and I see in the First Folio, I see this, I don't know if he's talking about school or body of water. Why? There's nobody there to pronounce it for me. I can't go to Shakespeare and say, Shakespeare, which one did you mean? School or shoal? Did you mean body of water or did you mean a schoolhouse? So that presents to us a particular confusion. So some scholars have gone and said, that image of a body of water and a riverbank is not the metaphor that he wants us to pick up. He really meant another metaphor. He meant another image. Are you with me, guys?
Yeah.
You're positive, because you must put up your hand and ask if you don't know. Usually I get questions. Yeah.
Say one more time.
Okay. So we have this image of Macbeth trying to jump a body of water, which is trying to jump the afterlife and the consequences. Some people say that that is a valid image, and that's the image that Shakespeare wanted to give us. But other people come and they say, based on all of this wordplay, and that some words back then were spelled the same way as other words, and we can't decipher which one's which. Some people say that that's not the metaphor that he wanted to give us. That's not the image he wanted to produce for us. Instead, he wanted to produce us another image. So they say, forget about the idea of the metaphor of a river and a riverbank. They say, replace that image with the idea of a school. So now, I'm going to give you a metaphor of a school, and perhaps this is what's going on with Macbeth in his mind. Maybe instead of a river, he's got an image of a school in his head, and that's what he's imagining. Are you fine with that? Okay. Now, this one's not a difficult one to get, but the word shoal in your text, perhaps it means schoolhouse. And the word bank, that was a word that also had another meaning, because when you think bank, you might think riverbank. You might think bank as in financial institution. Well, at this time, it could mean many things, but bank also would have meant, you know when you guys go into the theater, and you know those seats, how they're kind of raised? And even if you go to a lecture, like you go to a university today, you'll see those raised seats. That would have been called a bank. Okay. So what he's saying is that bank and shoal of time, a school and basically the lecture hall. And the images of Macbeth, speaking of the idea that our life, our current earthly life that we live in, think of it like a school. We are in this world, we are in this life, and we go through lessons. But eventually, we have to go outside of the schoolhouse. We have to go outside of the lecture hall. And that is where we will be judged on how well we've learned our lesson. Where are we really being judged once we leave that school hall that is life, that is earthly life? Heaven. Or hell. You will be judged on how well you've learned your lessons. If you've learned your lessons well, then you'll be gifted a good place in eternity. If you live them poorly, you'll live. Or if you've not failed, or if you've not passed your lessons, if you've failed them, if you haven't learned them well, okay, you might have a difficult fate once you leave the schoolhouse. So that's the second metaphor he gives us. You might make a decision as to which one you think it is. Okay? So that's two images that I've given you. Some people say that that image about a riverbank is wrong, that it's not there. They also say that that image of a schoolhouse and a lecture hall, they say that's rubbish. That's not there. So some scholars have come out and said, no, it's neither one of those two.
No, wait, sir.
Clearly.
I don't want to be more confused. Can you explain how those two things are different?
How are they different?
Yes.
Well, one is dealing with a river.
Okay, well, I know the literal difference.
Yeah.
I mean the, like, because both of them are you.
Oh, similar, get to the same ends.
Well, yeah, they both get to the same. Like, does it really matter which one he meant? If you're getting to the same end either way.
It will where I'm going with it.
Okay.
But you are right. In terms of the end, whichever image it is, it brings about something like the same type of message. Go with that. You're fine there. You're fine there. The overall message of each metaphor, of both metaphors, is the same. It's the same idea. Afterlife, present life. Okay? And kind of what happens. And kind of what he's trying to imply. So that's fine. The overall message, yeah, if you say that, yeah, they're kind of similar, they're the same bloody thing, you're fine there. And they're actually, these scholars are not disagreeing with each other on that, in terms of the overall message. They're just saying which metaphor does he mean? Which images is he using?
Is there a third metaphor?
There is a third metaphor.
Is there a fourth?
No, just a third. Okay.
Make up your mind.
So, other scholars will come out and they will say that neither of those images work. There is a third image that is provided. Because the word shoal and the word bank, as I said, they have different meanings. So, the word bank can mean a lecture hall, but it can also mean, as Kieran looks in his notes, it can also mean a courtroom. Okay? So it reflects the idea of the judge's bench.
Wait, can you say that part again?
It reflects the idea of a judge's bench.
What does?
So the word bank can mean lecture hall, or it can mean courtroom. It's a symbol of a court. So, the third image that he gives you is scrap that it's a river and a riverbank. It's not that image. It's not the school image. Perhaps it's the image of, get in your head, maybe Macbeth is imagining a courtroom. And similar to the school idea, is that you will be judged in a courtroom. Who will be the ultimate judge? God, right? So you will be judged based on what your actions are and what it is that you commit or what you do not commit. So you will be judged. And he actually mentions, as we go through the lines a little bit further, he will go and he will add to that image. And he will say that, wait a minute, I don't necessarily need to worry about the God's judgment. I can get judged right here, like right on earth, right? Because we have a place for that. That's what you were initially worried about, right? Like if I commit murder, right, the authorities might come and get me, right? And then I'm going to be placed in front of that court and they're going to judge me here. So there's the earthly consequences of it and the divine consequences. And then again, as I said, he keeps stating, let me stick to the earthly. Okay? So where am I going with these three images? Okay, that's fine. There's no way you could. But you understand three images.
But they're all the same.
Yes. That's not the point. Here's the point. It's something that's going on with Macbeth's mind.
He's confused.
What is going on with Macbeth's mind is that he's not actually focused on one image. The argument is that Macbeth actually means all three images at the same time.
Oh God, what? So confused now.
So what is going on, and again, I will explain this many times over, but stay with it. Macbeth has all the images in his head and they're floating around all at the same time. The intent is that Shakespeare intended all three of those metaphors just using those phrases and words. And the reason why is because it's showing remember I said imagination? Macbeth's imagination is more powerful than anybody you will come across. So when Macbeth sees something, he sees more than what you see. And when we talk about Macbeth and his greatness, we already saw him in the battlefield and stuff like that. This would be an element of his greatness. Macbeth is a poet. Macbeth is an artist. He is painting images in his head and in his mind that are beyond human comprehension. The fact that he can pick out three different images in one line or two. So his imagination is exploding. But his imagination is exploding so much that he can't control it. So his mind, the images that he's working with, they're all coming in a flood and in a flash, in quick succession. That's what's sort of happening in his mind. He's trying to rein it in. He's trying to control it, but it is going to burst through. His thoughts are getting ahead of himself. Because, of course, as I said before, remember I said Judas, he may not know that reference, but we do. He doesn't know what he's saying right now. He doesn't know all of the associations that he's making, but he's making them. Maybe he meant one, but he's actually revealing three. Okay? So on the surface, he doesn't know his own thoughts. So do you now get what I meant by that then? Does that make sense to you? There's a lot that's going to be thrown at you. That's the most difficult one to take in. The rest of the way as we go in this passage is not going to be easy. There will be a lot of information, but that's the hardest part of it. It's also the one that I agree with the least of what I tell you. There's going to be one that's just so cool. But anyway, that's what's going on there. Now to prove, I'll prove that all three images are actually present in Macbeth's mind and were actually intended by Shakespeare. Okay? That's what my next step is going to be, and then I'll finish after that. I'll leave you with those images. But I'll go to Mariah first.
Okay, so you know how you said you wouldn't have been able, like obviously because Shakespeare said you wouldn't be able to go up to him and ask him, hey, which one of the three did you mean? Do you think that he intended you not to know which one he meant, and that he actually purposefully used those words in that way so that you could pick up all three metaphors in it? Or do you think it was just like coincidence and he meant one of the three?
Okay. I'll speak to that in a couple of ways. Do you guys understand what a question is?
Yeah. Is he actually a genius or is he accidentally a genius?
Okay. I will say first off, everything that I tell you, most of it I will agree with what I say. Because it's coming from my head. But this one here, I couldn't have known. I don't know the whole English language and going back to this word and that. That is where my research sort of led me. I don't know that I love this interpretation. I don't. I'll offer it to you. Don't know that I love it. So I don't even necessarily say that, he intended it, or even that it happened by mistake. Maybe it's not even there. I will speak to the intent of an author. This goes for anybody. You might look and you might say, you read a story. So for instance, Harper Lee, you read To Kill a Mockingbird. Maybe she didn't mean everything that was there. Maybe we're looking in and we're picking in at it. For instance, the idea of feminism. Feminism is something that comes out. It's a movement. It's a thought process. It's an idea that comes out well after Shakespeare. So Shakespeare may not have known all the ins and outs of feminism, but people will go back to Shakespeare. They'll read Shakespeare and they'll say, look, I can find that there's a feminist spin on it. Would Shakespeare have necessarily known to have included this idea in that? Not necessarily so, but it doesn't matter. And it goes back to the idea that I gave you of the idea of inspiration at the beginning of the year. Shakespeare will tell you, I didn't write this on my own. I wrote, and he says that he's divinely inspired, so for him it's God. For the Greeks it would be, the gods. He says, my hand's moving, but it's God who's controlling the pen. So when he writes, he might have one specific intention, but thousands upon thousands of different other intentions can come into play because it's divine work. Now you may not agree with that because you may not even be religious. Or you may say, yeah, this whole divine stuff is crazy. But then I will actually look to you and say, you can look at an author like Dante or Shakespeare and you're going to say, okay, they've been read for 500 years. And then I go to a university library and I see that there's like stacks upon stacks upon stacks of different interpretations of Shakespeare. Whether he meant them all is not the point. The work is brilliant. It's brilliant. It's there to be found. You can pick out those particular ideas. Freud, you want to go back to that guy? You can find his stuff in here. He actually read Macbeth and he read Hamlet and he said it's over. Right? I won't speak on those terms because then Miles is just going to go. But Freud comes after Shakespeare. But you can put a Freudian interpretation on it. Shakespeare wouldn't have known all of his ideas. But it's there to be found. So it doesn't necessarily matter if he intended it. Though much of what they do is definitely intended. Like their craft and their ability. And you'll see it. If you don't buy that interpretation, you will see that there's a clear intention with some of the word choice that he uses later on in this passage. Like it's intentional, it's there, it's present. Right? Some will be less hard to sell you on than that particular interpretation. Okay, but proof for those who want to believe it that he means all three of those comes in the lines. So the first image, I mean again, I think it should say somewhere there about the river image. That's the most common one. That's probably the one that you guys buy the most. When you look, it says, he's talking about jumping, right? So it makes sense. I mean, but here upon this bank in Sholakan, we jump the life to come. That's the river image, right in those lines. But as we go forward, okay, we'll actually see that there's the river image, but then in the next one, I see a courtroom image. Look at the next lines. Here's the court. But in these cases, we still have judgment here that we but teach bloody instruction. And further on, we see another courtroom suggestion. This even-handed justice. So here we have courtroom imagery that's actually coming on in the lines that further. For the teaching schoolhouse image, we have lines that suggest that it might be that, because as we go further, as I just read, not only do we have the judgment image, we have the idea there. We but teach bloody instructions. So there's more lines that suggest that it's the teaching instance, others suggest that it's the courtroom instance, and others suggest that it's the river image. So you see all of those things that are working actually in other parts and passages in the thing. That's where I would say I'll give this interpretation some credibility. That's why I look. If it were just facing it off of shoal and bank, I don't know. But because those images come up again in further lines, just shortly thereafter, then it starts to suggest. Okay. Okay, I'll go a little bit further. So, but in these cases, we still have judgment here, but that we teach blood instruction. That's what I talked about with if we learn our lessons well, and so on and so forth. He does give a spin. He says we have judgment here that we teach blood instructions, which being taught return to play the inventor. This is just a practical concern. It's not crucial, but what's he saying there in those lines? He's saying I gotta be careful, okay? Because if I teach bloody instruction, if I'm the teacher and I teach bloody instruction, which means if I teach murder, right? If I teach to be in blood, then that might return to plague me. He's looking and just considering, if I kill the king, aren't I modeling or showing or teaching that I too, proving that I too can be killed? So if I kill a king, I prove that kings can be disposed. And when I become king, it might come to stab me in the back, right? So I might be plagued, right, by what it is that I've done, okay? And he adds to that image, he says this even-handed justice. When you think of the idea of even-handed justice, it's giving us that instance of, you'll see it in every courtroom, everywhere, scales, right? So there's that idea of justice as referenced by the scales, but he changes the image. He doesn't make it a scale. He says, this even-handed justice commends the ingredients of our poisoned chalice to our own lips. He says he gives us just sort of a take on what is justice. And he says, is justice the idea of, I give you a poisoned cup, okay? You pass that around, pass it around the table, where's it going to come back to?
You.
Back to you. So it's the idea of, is justice the idea of what goes around, comes around? I kill the king, I'll come back and I'll be killed. Is that his particular idea of justice? So there he's just fiddling with that particular idea. Do you want me to continue?
Yes.
Yeah?
Depends how long.
I'm so tired.
I'll give you 10 minutes.
You give me 10 minutes? Why am I asking you? I'm gonna go to 2:37 just to bug you. Listen, if you get less of it here, I mean I said kind of usually it takes me longer to say it. Maybe because I've taught it so many times. If you want me to stop, sure, it just means you get more and more. Like it's gonna be heavier and more.
Okay, just go.
Okay, I'll go 10 minutes, I promise. Wherever I gotta have a mid-sentence, you can tell me to shut up.
220?
220, just say
If you
stop.
want to finish your sentence, 221 is okay.
Okay, thank you. You're such a nice person. Alright, so, okay, this is cool. This is my favorite one, but it'll take a while. So he brings in all those things. He brings in that, wants to avoid the heavenly, and he wants to stick with the practical concerns and the earthly concerns. So now he says, he's here in double trust. So he goes back and he says, he's here in double trust. Who is here in double trust? Duncan. Says, King Duncan has come to my castle and he's here in double trust, which just means that he trusts me in two different types of ways. So he trusts me in two ways. It's twofold. Okay? Note that he says, two ways he trusts me. The first way that he trusts me, or the first reason why he trusts me, is that I am his kinsman. So underline all that. Just the whole passage is beyond that. So he says he trusts me first because I am his kinsman. What is a kinsman? You know? Who?
It's like close friends.
Yeah, in the briefest terms, a kinsman, if I were called your kinsman at that particular time, that A would be a very great honor. But you would almost like, if you're my kinsman, you're kind of like my brother, my cousin. That's where they even say in the text, right? Oh, worthy, valiant cousin, right? They would have seen themselves as a brotherhood, a sisterhood, even a type of a family. If you were my kinsman, you were like my family. So there is a certain honor in that, and that honor is bigger then than it is now. So you have to know the weight of that, the brevity of that. That is a big deal. Okay, especially in a warrior militaristic society like this one, right? This would have been the idea where there's Macbeth and he's at war, right? And he's with his men, right, for weeks on end or months on end, right? So there's a bond that's sort of established and developed. So he says, you're my kinsman, I owe you something. I am loyal to you, I'm trustworthy to you as a kinsman. So he says that's the first way, but I'm also He also trusts me because I am his subject. And what does that mean? I'm his subject. That one's easy.
Like a servant.
Yeah, I'm part of the court. I play a role within, right? There's the jester, there's the knights, there's the this, there's the that. So I'm a subject of his court. Almost like an employee of his court, right? So he trusts me as that as well. I am his military leader. So he says, I trust him now. He trusts me in two ways. In two ways. Both are strong against the deed. Both of those, because I'm his kinsman, because I'm his subject, I should be strong against the deed. I should be actually the person who is against murdering him. I should be protecting him. That would actually be my role, right? So he recognizes that I should be strong against the murderer, not be the murderer myself. And he says, finally, the third way that he trusts me is that I'm also his host. Well, there's a couple of things going on there, but first off, what does he mean by I'm his host? That's the easiest one.
He's hosting the party.
He's hosting him. So, says I'm also his host. Again, big deal. You think like, she over here, we had Emily who hosted some of you guys over, like you had a presentation and she hosted you and she had your food and everything like that. But you were probably like, when the hell are these people leaving, right?
Yeah.
It's not as big of a deal on having somebody over or anything like that. That society, a host was almost like a sacred trust. If you open your doors up to somebody, you were the protector, and that's what he'll say here. So again, it's more of a sacred deal back then, and it's a big deal. But we have a problem. I'm with him in double trust. I'm with him in double trust. What's happening with Macbeth? He says he trusts me in two ways, but he gives us three. Okay. He gives us three. More than he can count is this. And this is key, and then it's this one you would want, if you were tested on an exam, you had to make choices, which you will, this is one you'd hit on. He is intending to give two, but his mind is running wild. His thoughts are running wild. Remember I said there's a thought and then he just goes with it and he sees where it leads and then it leads to unexpected places? This is a key for that. He's intending to give two, but he can't keep the flood going. He can't keep it under control. So instead of two, he blurts out a third. Unexpected, showing he's not in control of his mind. Also his imagination, again, having that brilliance to it, as will be seen. How much time? We got 5 more minutes. So he says 3 ways that he trusts me, when really he meant two. His mind's racing against him. He says all of those reasons, the 3 or the 2, whatever we want to call it, it's for those reasons that I should shut the door. Should, against his murderer, shut the door. I should shut the door on the murderer, let alone me take the knife myself, not bear the knife myself. Besides, this Duncan has borne his faculties so meek, has been so clear in his great office, that his virtues will plead like trumpet-tongued angels against the deep damnation of his taking off. You have a question?
I got a question about so it's 2 out of, he says 2, but he gives 3. Could that mean that he doesn't consider King Duncan as his kinsman as the king considers him?
Say that again?
So while the king considers Macbeth as his kinsman, can Macbeth not consider the king as his king?
No, he considers him. He would.
Okay.
He says, I listen, as a noble, honorable person, I should not do this. We agree with him. Yeah, you make a good point, Macbeth. Yeah, you shouldn't do this. Okay? So, definitely, he's betraying the guy. There's no question. How's he going to kill him? He's going to kill him when he's sleeping. Right? So, definitely, he does not trust him. Okay? Do you want to know can I do the coolest part of this in 3 minutes?
Yeah, go.
3 minutes?
Okay, not only that.
Is it gonna be cramped and rushed in 3
How
minutes?
cool.
Yeah.
Don't leave a cliffhanger.
Don't leave a cliffhanger.
Go on.
Do it.
Just go on.
Okay, I don't have a cliffhanger style. I don't have a cliffhanger style. They
Just
just,
go.
okay, he mentions,
Better be cool.
I find this very odd. Actually, I find this rather interesting here. I don't think it a coincidence. Right now, he is speaking of practical things. Mainly they're practical, but idea of a host, idea of a kinsman, idea of a subject. Okay, those are earthly titles, earthly roles, and all that. So he thinks that he's keeping everything, yeah, I'm just sticking to the practical, to the earthly. I can deal with that. I don't want the divine.
And then
But I find it very interesting, and I don't think it's a coincidence here, that he mentions the word, underline it, he mentions the word chalice. So he uses the word chalice. You'll see, commends the ingredients of our poison, chalice. He uses the word chalice, and only 1, 2, 3 lines later does he mention the word host. Where do you see,
Oh, Jesus.
where do you see a chalice and a host? Okay. So, he thinks he's talking about earthly concerns, and he's talking about he being an actual host, right? That's the one level of meaning. What he doesn't realize is he's giving a second level of meaning. And what he's actually recalling is the scene of the Last Supper. How is he doing so? Well, he speaks of host, he speaks of chalice. That makes sense to me, because remember the scene? The servants are going by and they're setting the table. He looks at the cup. He looks at the cup, and when I look, I have no imagination, I see a cup. When he looks at a cup, he sees the Last Supper it's re-brought out. I mean, right now, it is him, dinner table, Last Supper, there's King Duncan in the middle, you know that portrait. Oh, and by the way, whose supper is it?
King Duncan.
Which supper in his life is it? His last. He's going to die. So, okay, that was cool. Did I do it in, I have a minute to spare. Okay.
So I read this in Cole's notes or Blue differently.
Did you?
Yeah.
There's no way, that's in Cole's notes?
It says the Christ-like portrayal and stuff is in
Oh,
Cole's
but it doesn't mention about there's a host behind all of this. Come on, I better than Cole's notes. I got it because I'm retiring. I don't have the money to retire. That is huge. He doesn't know that he's giving that image. He just thinks he's giving the general flatline one about a host and a kinsman and all that. That's the literal. He thinks he's giving that. We see more. We actually know more of what it is that he's going through than he does himself. We're in his mind, and we're deep into his mind, deeper than he is. So we have access to it, and what's happening behind the practical earthly, the divine consequences and the divine thoughts are brimming and they're boiling, and by the time we get to the end of the passage, they're going to burst forth in a flood and nearly crush the man. And nearly crush the man. Okay, that we're saving for tomorrow. Okay. Can you end recording?
It's over.
Okay, can you now end recording? I am screwed.
Watch it not have recorded at all.
That's at the surface, but now you're going to see a reversal. And what he didn't recognize was that underneath his thoughts and his ideas was the scene of the Eucharist. And when he's thinking of the scene of the Eucharist, that's clearly a divine image. That's clearly, yeah, perfect. Is it on?
Yeah.
Like it's recording? Clearly that's a divine image, because as much as he's trying to hide it, that's what's really on his mind. Okay, so that's going to come to a boiling point into a surface, and it'll get to a point where he can't hide it anymore. Okay? Yeah, please close that. So, I'll just read the lines. He's here in double trust, but I'm not going to stop on those lines because I've spoken of them. Okay? So just go towards the middle of the passage. So, he's here in double trust. We know what that means. It tells us 3 things. First, as I'm his kinsman and his subject, strong both against the deed. Then, as his host, who should against his murderer shut the door, not bear the knife myself. I shouldn't kill him. I should actually be protecting him, given all of these things. Makes sense. We know that at the end of this passage, he actually decides not to kill Duncan. So that's making sense, but he kind of goes a little bit wishy-washy. Now, important, he says, besides, this Duncan hath borne his faculties so meek. That tells me there's a transition point in this passage. What could he not do at the beginning of the passage that he's done here? Beginning of the passage avoids it.
Say murder?
Okay. He couldn't say the man he was murdering, and he couldn't say what he was doing. He kept on saying it. Okay. Even when he did, he said assassination, which is kind of an exotic word at the time. So now, he finally comes out with it. This is the bursting forth of his desires, his intentions, and the fear of the consequences, as we'll soon see. So now he finally mentions things. He mentions the man that he's about to kill, and he describes him in specific terms that clearly Emily's Spark Notes or Cole's Notes or whatever it is has mentioned, because yes, there's no debate about this. There's a general interpretation that's going to tell you about King Duncan, but if you want the proof of that he's a Christ figure, he's described in Christ's terms. Okay, who do we typically call meek? Christ. That's usually a word that's associated with him. So he says, besides this Duncan hath borne his faculties so meek. So there's the Christ image. Hath been so clear in his great office. He's just saying he's been a good king. He's been noble. He's been valiant as a king. And now the important image. That his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet-tongued, against the deep damnation of his taking off. What did he literally say there?
Trumpet will sound when he dies.
Saying, I shouldn't kill him because of the reasons that I just stated. I'm his kinsman, I'm his this. So I shouldn't kill him. I should protect him. And also, furthermore, besides that, I shouldn't kill him because he's a great king. He's been good. He's been meek. He's been humble. He's been great in his office. Okay, he leads the people well. And because of that, his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet-tongued, against the deep damnation of his taking off. That's going to be harder to unpack. Which gives us as to what he's literally saying. It's almost like, if I kill him, this is what will happen. All right, first we go to the lines, literally. Okay, Sydney, try.
Like if he kills him, he's gonna be king, like the trumpets are gonna play for him. Is that what it's saying?
The trumpets are going to play for.
For Macbeth.
Okay, so there will be angels, and they will have trumpets, and they will be playing. Their music will be what? What will their music say? What will it produce?
The king's death.
Yeah. Not so much the king's death as much as these angels are going to play out his virtues. So Duncan's a virtuous guy, so he's got all of these great virtues. They will play out his virtues. It's almost a sense of guilt will act upon Macbeth. If I commit this crime, here we'll have these angels, an image of these angels, and they will plead out. They will sing his virtues in my ears, okay, for all eternity. But that's just a general note. I'm going to unpack that image very strongly there, okay? So check that. Literally, that's what he's saying. There's more to it. What you might want to also look at is he mentioned Duncan. Okay, finally brings out the man he's going to kill. And then he finally brings out what he's afraid of. What in that passage is he afraid of? There's a word there that he's afraid of. Damnation. He is afraid of damnation. The divine now comes out, and in full force. And, remember I said that there's all these biblical references and so on and so forth? Well, there's another one there. Okay, so when I see those lines, I then point and I go, sounds familiar, to Corinthians 11, verses 27 to 29. Don't worry about, you don't have to throw that back at me. But it comes from Corinthians, and these are the lines from the Bible. Wherefore, whosoever shall eat this bread and drink this cup of the Lord unworthily shall be guilty of the body and the blood of the Lord. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of that bread and drink of that cup. For he that eateth and drinketh unworthily eateth and drinketh damnation to himself. So Macbeth, again, is making a reference here that he may not realize the full weight of, but he's referencing again the host. Okay? He's referencing the host yet again, and there's more level of meaning there. So now he goes back, references the betrayal, references the host, and now references what's going to happen, recognizes that he's the unworthy one, and he's the one that is going to suffer damnation from that. He's actually coming here to terms and sort of having a deep understanding that he can't get away with this. If he gets away with it in terms of earthly consequences, he won't get away from it in the eyes of God, who is going to show him his wrath. That's what he's really worried about. Ray Jean.
What does he recognize?
What does Macbeth recognize? That he can't, if he murders King Duncan, he knows he shouldn't do it, different from Oedipus, knows he shouldn't do it, does it anyway. But he recognizes here that if he does it, he hasn't yet, if he does it, he cannot escape the divine consequences. And the divine consequences worry him far more than the earthly consequences. He might even be able to figure out how to get away from the earthly consequences, but not the divine. He is, in a way, screwed. Okay? That's what he's coming to a realization from. But the image is more important than that. Because this is how it speaks to his imagination and how brilliant a character and how, I stress this, great a character Macbeth is. His image of the angel's trumpet tongue. Okay? That is another reference. Okay? And that's going to require me to tell you a little bit of a story. And I usually screw this story up because I kind of mix up things, and especially since I have a migraine, it probably won't go all that well. But I think it's an interesting story. Okay? So if you go back to the lines where it says, his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet-tongued against the deep damnation of his taking off. We're going to build the trumpet image with the angels. Okay? Yep. Ooh.
Because I like the gods who were like the gods trumpeter, like in heaven.
Yes. Okay. These are the heavenly divine angels. Okay, and they're pleading. They're with their trumpets. That's a common image, and they're basically expressing Duncan's virtues, right? So it's almost like you get Macbeth, and there he is, right? And it's killing him. It's racking him for all eternity. He will hear, right, the virtues of Duncan and know what it is that he's done. Okay, so that's the general thing. In terms of the story that Shakespeare is referencing, I'll tell you, I guess, after Mariah.
Isn't like at the resurrection when Jesus goes to heaven, like fully goes to heaven, isn't there like an image where there's like two angels playing with trumpets in the background?
Yeah, there's going to be those. That's in many places. Yes. So get that image in your head, and that might actually be playing here too. Okay, but this is the one that he's speaking of. So there is this guy, this saint, and his name is Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. And don't worry about even having to write that down. Okay, but there's this saint, Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, and he kind of wanted to express how God kind of works. Right, so he wanted to explain to the common people, and he developed a story, or he developed actually what would have been performed many times. So during Shakespeare's time, this actually would have been a performance in the theater itself that often played out this.
Please return to the chapel immediately. Thank you.
That often played out this story. So the story is this: we have God, and God has just figured out that Adam and Eve have committed the sin of eating the forbidden fruit. So God now looks and he says, "Okay, how am I going to deal with this?" And what he does is he goes to his 4 daughters. So God is speaking to his 4 daughters. Now his 4 daughters are just what they're supposed to be. They're aspects of God. They represent certain sides of God. So the 4 daughters are actually the 4 virtues. Those 4 virtues, I hope I get this right, are truth, peace, mercy, and justice. Can I write that down for even my own purposes? Mercy, justice, peace. What was the last? See, I almost think of it like a God there, he's the judge, and he is there ready to make judgment on Adam and Eve and make humanity and mankind. And he goes and he says, okay, let me speak to my daughters, but those are just, let me speak to the different sides that make up who I am, right? And that's what makes up God. He is mercy, he is justice, he is peace, he is truth. So he says, okay, we got to come to terms. So one of the daughters comes up. There's an order to this. I can't know if I'll remember it, and I hope I do. So one of the daughters comes up, and that daughter is Justice. And Justice comes to God and says, God, you need to punish Adam and Eve. Okay, they need to die Because justice says that, okay, you put in a particular law. You said when you eat of this fruit, you will die. Justice says that you got to speak to that particular law. You said it, must happen. Adam and Eve must die. So truth comes. And truth comes out as a daughter and says, I agree with justice. I agree with justice because it is true that you did in fact say that. So if you are God, you are truthful. You wouldn't be God if you weren't truthful and you didn't adhere to justice. So you must kill Adam and Eve. They must die. Who the hell comes next? Mercy comes next. And mercy says, listen, God, I know what justice is saying, and I know what, help me out, truth is saying. I know what it is that they're saying, but you are as much mercy as you are justice and you are truth. And if you're to be merciful, that means you have to be merciful, and for you to be merciful, you must show them that grace. You must extend that hand. Okay? And peace comes out and says, listen, for there to be any peace, you have to be on the side here. I'm on the side of mercy, because in order to be on the side of peace, you have to recognize, you to be peaceful, you have to recognize that there has to be this gap that needs to be filled. There needs to be that harmony. There needs to be that balance. If you kill them, there's going to be a separation. There's going to be something missing in your whole plan. So, in order to show peace, you better grant them the mercy that mercy is asking for. Okay? I've never told this story as worse as I just did. But you guys follow kind of what happens there.
Yeah.
So God now is at a little bit of a crossroads. God looks and says, how do I reconcile all of those particular things? Two people want a punishment. Two of my daughters want a punishment. Two of my daughters are saying, don't worry, make it okay. So how does he reconcile all of these daughters and get them all to agree? You guys know. He sends who to earth?
Adam and Eve.
Jesus.
I'm so
Jesus.
confused.
Okay, how does he reconcile it? He says there needs to be a punishment that will satisfy you and you. They're calling for the punishment. They're calling for the death.
Wait, Jesus came way after Adam and Eve.
So what? He still reconciles things.
What we're talking about Adam and Eve.
So he just like holds his conflict.
Jesus-
You're talking about it because you're looking in that there's sort of a linear thing to time. God doesn't guide it by time. Okay, so it all. This is lesson number 1 of the
Yeah,
year.
he taught us this, like
Remember?
Jesus, like the Father,
He
the Son,
completes
and the Holy Spirit are all God. So
Yeah.
they all exist at once. So the Son was existing the same time God was existing.
Yeah.
We wouldn't remember.
You didn't know that?
Okay, anyway, don't let that trouble you, the timelines. Okay, because for God there is no timeline. It all gets fixed. That Adam and Eve get fixed when Christ comes down. That's his purpose. He fixes it. Okay. So how does he do it? He says justice and truth want the punishment. They want that enacted. They want the death. Okay? Because that was the punishment that I stated. So I will do that. I will show them that, yes, that death is going to happen. But I got to show mercy and I got to show peace. How am I going to do that? Instead of Adam and Eve, I will become a human being. I will take on the death. So here mankind needs to die. They will die through Christ. Christ will be the one that says, I will become a man and I will take on the punishment that I've dictated. Everybody follows that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you sure? Because you still seem a little bit confused.
Don't overanalyze
And then
it.
he did. So,
So he satisfies all of them. He gives a punishment.
because Jesus.
He gives a punishment, so he satisfies these two. But he shows mercy and he shows peace by bridging the gap. He doesn't have Adam and Eve take the punishment. He doesn't have humanity take the punishment in that sense. He punishes himself as a man. Does that make sense? Okay. Now. So he's referencing that particular story. And now what you're to envision, that's the first chunk of it. Okay? What you're envisioning is first, you have to take this entire play and infuse Christianity into it. There is a Christian message. So I've been talking about Greeks and the fates. And then Shakespeare's saying, I know that tradition, I'm going to use it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, oh yeah, but I'm kind of a Christian writer. So I'm going to say, here's how fate works differently under the Christian concept. Okay, and we'll get to that as the play unfolds. But what he's doing there is he takes that particular image. So these particular trumpet-tongued angels, they're not just any trumpet-tongued angels, they are those trumpet-tongued angels. That is mercy, peace, justice, and the fourth thing on the board is those four. And what they are is they are not some small image, because largeness and smallness is big here. They are gigantic. So now you almost want to get a picture, paint a picture in your head. Right now you have Macbeth, and you have him in front of these four gigantic angels who are forever with their trumpets right up in his ear, pleading out, and his guilt is coming. Okay, that's his guilt coming out. Okay, then you add on to that image. The next lines. And pity, like a newborn babe striding the blast. So now what you do is you look and say, he adds, so now you have your trumpet-tongued angels in your image. You have Macbeth, who compared to these trumpet-tongued angels is what? Small. Okay, and that's important. So small little Macbeth, big gigantic angels, for all eternity, playing out this guilt. And then on top of that, here's what's going on in this image. It goes from an image of a naked newborn babe. Who might the reference to the naked newborn babe be?
Jesus.
Okay, that's the image of Christ. Okay, so he's referring to the image of Christ as a newborn babe. Then in the next line, a few words over, we just hear the word, we have the other word of striding the blast. What that might be a reference to, it's a Christian reference. Striding the blast. When you think of striding the blast, what type of moment do you think of? We just got the Christ in the manger, and now he gave us another image that's completely opposite. The final judgment. Okay? The striding the blast is a reference to the idea of the last judgment. So now, the last judgment is Christ is going to come again, and he's going to take the good people up, and he's going to take the bad people, and he's going to whisk them down. Okay? So now, in Macbeth's head, and what's racking through this image is these trumpet-tongued angels, and then everything is moving at breakneck speed for him. Right now, what he is seeing is the beginning and the end of things, all at the same time. So again, this is a divine image that is developing. He's not dealing with small consequences. He's dealing with the whole concept of divinity. And it's all attacking him in a type of a way here. So basically, what's going through his head, what's going through his image, is the beginning and the end, all happening all at once. Marking confusion, marking the smallness of Macbeth. All eternity is after him. And then he adds to it, or heaven's cherubim, horsed upon the sightless couriers of the air, shall blow the horrid deed in every eye. And I'll just reference, I'll get to those images later, that tears shall drown the wind. So now you build angels, trumpets, blowing in his ear. Time, moving all at once, from beginning to end. And now you have tears that drown the wind. Do you know what those tears are? Whose tears would they be?
Jesus.
Not even.
I don't know.
These are not just his tears. Those are the tears of all mankind of all time. So what's now you have this storm that has now developed in his mind. So it is raining down, but it is the rain. The rain is the tears of all mankind that are frowning upon and crying over Duncan's death. Okay? You must know that image. As poorly as it is, but you must know that image. Because it's setting up one of the themes that we spoke of. The first theme, which is the biggest in the play perhaps, is that idea of the imagination. That is the power of this man's imagination. That is all going on all at once. On top of the images that I've already given you, and on top of the images that I will continue to give you because we're not done the passage. So you look at it and you say, what is great about Macbeth? his imagination is great. It is powerful. He is almost like a Michelangelo. In fact, when I read this image and I look at the images there, I can't actually help but think of the Sistine Chapel. And if you've ever seen it, or you've ever been there in person, it's truly magnificent. And the final image, because he's got this ceiling and he's got the whole history. So he'll have God and, Adam and God, and you've probably seen where they're going to touch fingers and stuff like that. But the final image is a very horrifying one. Like it's kind of like deep. Actually, if I have time, I'll maybe show you. I'll just get it up, Google it, and I'll show it up to you. But the last image is an image of that, what I spoke of, the Last Judgment. Because he's giving you a whole history, Michelangelo, through that painting, through that ceiling. And that last image, what it shows is it shows Christ. But Christ isn't the Christ you think of. It's not the humble little baby. It's Christ who's coming down and laying judgment. So there you have Christ, but it's called, not in a bad way, but he's called the terrible Christ. This is the Christ who is going to enact justice. And what you see is that even the Virgin Mary, who is by his side in this painting, it is so, I guess, terrible that even the Virgin Mary looks away. So there she is, she's looking away in the particular image. And what's happening? There's the good people who are rising up. So you look at them, they're rising up, they're looking kind of hopeful. But you can't help but look at the ones who are being sent down, right? And there they are, like they're shaking their fist. Some of them are horrified, right? And you see where it is that they're going. He's got that image there in his head. It's almost like he's painted an entire Sistine Chapel in his head. It's ridiculous. So his imagination, you really, again, you guys may not appreciate it because you're still kind of learning the lines, right? Once you get really, really skilled at it and interpreting those lines, you will see it. And then you'll see the power of Shakespeare. Like you'll see how is this guy this good, right? Because he can paint a picture just through a couple of words, right? So that's what his power is there, right? And then think the brevity of that. It's a stress, the tears of all mankind that drown him, right? In guilt and in sorrow and in pain. And then you think of those terms, of those big terms. What is eternity? You're thinking about that, right? And all of that is on you. So now what's happened to Macbeth? In just a few pages, what are we on? Page 12? 19. In 19 pages, he has gone and set up an image of Macbeth, battlefield, warrior, courageous and brave, and you thought him like, remember I said the Darth Vader image, in a good way? He's brought him here and reduced him to nothing more than an ant or a speck in the great scheme of things. To God, Macbeth, you are nothing. And that's what he's probably going to find out a little bit too harshly. So there's the reduction, right? And that's a very, very important image. And then it continues, okay? And this next image will be kind of important too, okay? This will finish things off, okay? And he does some cool things, I think, in terms of his languages, okay? So I'll go back up, because he's developing, there's lots of images that are kind of within images. So, the deep damnation of his taking off, and pity like a newborn babe striding the blast, or heaven's cherubim horsed upon the sightless couriers of the air. So I just have you mark heaven's cherubim horsed. A cherubim is an angel. Okay, it's a high up order of angel. I think it's the second highest. So it's a high up order of angel. I think the cherubim is the one that's actually guarding the gate. Adam and Eve, you can't come back, and the cherubim guards the gate. But you get the image of the horse. Okay. Macbeth will later be pictured, okay, of the idea of him on a horse, but he's not on a heavenly horse. So it sets up image of the heavenly, the divine horse. That's a horse there of justice. Okay, upon the sightless couriers of the air shall blow the horrid deed in every eye, that tears shall drown the wind. He's not on that horse, he's on this horse. I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which overleaps itself and falls on the other side. Okay. So now I want you to get the image of Macbeth, and he's on a horse. Okay. And he's trying to do something. What's he trying to do on this horse? This you should know. What might he be trying to do? What did you predict? He's riding it, and he's going to do what? No, he's not killing any horses. You have it. Yeah, he's got to try to make a jump. Remember, he's trying to make the jump. He's ambitious. He wants to go and be king, and he's not the king. Okay, so he's trying to make a jump. But he's not on a heavenly horse. He's on a very different type of a horse, and it's a pathetic image. He's not even on a real horse. Okay, when it says they're vaulting ambition, is there any gymnasts around? Do we got any gymnasts? You guys know the idea, like it's called the. Would have been called. I think it's still called this now. Would have been called the vault when you go up in the vault. Okay. So it's the image of him, and I guess I'll just describe it to you because you guys do know. If you go into like a gymnasium and you see like all that gymnast stuff, you know that there's that big like that.
Yeah, it's the thing where you run up and you go up in the spring and then you put your hands up the thing.
It's like the balancing bar, right? Where you go on and there's people like they're doing like all these things and they're jumping on it and everything like that. Okay, the beam. Okay. So it's got that image there of him with the beam. Now, I don't know anything about gymnastics. I can't do a splits or nothing like that. But the talk is that if you're not trained on that, okay, and you try to jump on it, what's going to happen? You're going to fall, okay? That's the image. So you get the divine image, and then you get the pathetic, lowly image of Macbeth trying to make a particular jump that he's not capable of, okay? So that's the image there that you want to sort of unpack. It's all showing like this guy's nothing. This guy is divine matters. He's a speck. So more importantly is this. He's talking in here, and this is why he's going to come to the idea that I'm not going to do it. He says, I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent. I have intentions. I have motivations to kill the king. I can do this, I can do that. I'm an ambitious person, as he says. He goes, I have vaulting ambition. So he says, I have motivations. I have ambition. That's not the problem with me. Notice that Lady Macbeth already said that before. She said he's got enough ambition. She says, I have ambition. Not just any ambition, vaulting ambition. Vaulting, excessive. Right? If I'm vaulting, it's not just a jump, it's a big jump. So he says, I have enough ambition. I have an excess of ambition. That's not going to stop me from doing this. What will stop me? Okay, he doesn't state specifically. I mean, that is true. He says, I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent. What does that mean? Because that's the key. If I have no spur.
I have no weapon or reason to get into my intent.
Like it makes the work, it gets the horse going.
There you go. You know the image. Okay? What does a spur do? If you don't know what a spur is, she knows what it is. She'll explain it.
It hurts.
Is there one of those? They get this one and then they go.
Okay.
Wait, what?
You got it.
The spiky things that cowboys have on the
They
back of their
like kick
boots.
the horses like.
Okay.
and it's like, go.
You know a cowboy? And you know a cowboy boot? And you know there's that thing, that metal thing?
The circle?
Yes. Okay? My favorite basketball team's called the San Antonio Spurs. This particular boot has this sharp little metal clipping on it, right? Or metal thing on it. It's a circular little thing. Okay? The purpose of that particular sharp metal thing, what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to kind of kickstart the horse. Right? Horse ain't moving. Give it a little poke, give it a little whack, and it'll start running. So that's what he's saying. He goes, I have enough ambition. I need a spur. I need something to push me along into the particular deed. Right? I'm at a block. My imagination has just convinced me not to do it. And when you say his imagination, Sidney's right. It's his conscience. I wouldn't even say he's a nice guy. It's more that he has a conscience. And his conscience is preventing him from doing and going along with it. So he says, I'm on the fence. I don't have a spur to push me into it. Right? To kickstart me into it. So I need that push. Okay? And I think that this part, Miles, if you didn't think the other part was cool, then I'm going at this one. And if you don't think this is cool, then go to hell. Okay? Then go to hell. No, you gotta wait on this and then I
Wilson
promise.
was kind of lame too.
Okay, actually.
Sir Wilson was kind of lame too.
Screw you.
Wait, how?
I'm gonna try to be 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay? So, it says, I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which overleaps itself and falls on the other side. Go now quickly, page 18, you will find it. Duncan is talking to Lady Macbeth in scene 6, and he calls her something. Go. He calls her something. He says, where's the Thane of Cawdor? Where's the Thane of Cawdor? We coursed him at the heels and had a purpose to be his purveyor, but he rides well. Duncan is saying, we were traveling over to your castle, and we lost Macbeth somewhere along the way. He was riding really well, okay? So has he arrived yet? And he goes then to Lady Macbeth, he goes, and his great love, you, Lady Macbeth, his great love, you are sharp as his spur. You are sharp as his spur. Who's the spur that's going to push him along? Lady Macbeth. That's the role that she will fulfill. She will be the one, and you could look at it, I mean, many people are going to say she's like the serpent, and many people are going to say she's like Eve here. So here we have Adam, and there was the fruit, and who's the one that kind of pushes him into it? You could argue it's Eve, right? She sort of says, oh, here's the fruit, eat of it, and he does. Okay, so she could be that. She also has that serpent image where she tempts him into the particular deed, convinces him of it. We'll see that later. Okay, so that's there. She is the spur that is going to push him into the murder. And that's going to happen in next scene when I deal with you guys tomorrow. So he says, I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition. Now note where he says, which overleaps itself. Making a jump, but it's an overleap. It's too big a jump. It's an extreme of a jump. So he's going to make a jump he can't make, and the neat thing is that he actually knows that he can't make it, but he's going to do it anyway. He's like, I can't divorce myself of the divine consequences. I know this, I'm screwed. But he's still going to do it, okay? And what happens? Look at the next sentence. Vaulting ambition, which overleaps itself and falls on the other. What happened to his sentence? He gets cut off. Just as he's not going to complete the jump, he doesn't complete his sentence. What did you just say? Okay, I'm not finished yet. Turn the page.
Wait.
Okay, write that down. You can't turn the page yet. Do not turn the page. Do it at the same time. Shh. Let them finish. We're not done the point. Okay? So he does not finish the sentence, just like he will not complete the jump. Who completes the sentence for him?
Lady Macbeth.
Enter Lady Macbeth.
Wait, is he talking out loud right now, or is he talking in his head?
No, it's in his head. He's speaking just to us. It's his thoughts that are revealed. But he can't complete his thought. Enter Lady Macbeth. The stage directions are key. She is going to be the one that's going to complete it for him. She completes she interrupts him. She's the one that's going to complete. He will enter into the deed. And in fact, spoiler alert for tomorrow, when we deal with this particular scene, it's all about that. He's going to say, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. I've decided we're not going ahead with the murder. And she's going to come and say, what? Oh, think again. Okay, and that's where we'll go and we'll drop off for two. Okay? Yeah.
Wait, that was the cool part?
I hate this guy. I hate him. I don't know what else to say to him anymore. Good Lord.